Out front tonight, $3,500 for your life. That's what one city aligned with Russia is now offering men who sign up to fight Putin's war. This is it. This is the decree. We've got it in hand. It's a decree signed by the leaders of Baikonur City, a city aligned with Russia, technically right over the border in Kazakhstan. It establishes, and let me just read what it says here in this decree. It says it establishes a lump sum payment to mobilize citizens, as well as persons who voluntarily expressed their desire to take part in the special military operation and who signed a contract for military service residing in Baikonur City as a measure of social support in the amount of 260,000 rubles. So there you go. You've got the price of a life there. The price of a life is 260,000 rubles. That's about $3,500. It seems it may be more of a choice there, though, $3,500 to die, than it is in many other places in Russia. The mayor of Kuznets in western Russia now saying unemployed men should only be given one option. He's suggesting the town shut down the unemployment center and instead send anybody who needs work to war. His words, quote, "The unemployed must enlist in the army. If you have nothing to do, then defend your homeland, and you'll be paid for it." Now, the mayor insisting that this will solve the city's unemployment problem and Putin's problems on the battlefield. It's just incredible to hear this, right? And again, $3,500 for your life. But of course, from the numbers we know, there is a high chance that anybody who takes any of these deals and goes to the Russian front does not come home alive. We sometimes share intercepted phone calls with you. And tonight, we have one that Ukraine intercepted, which is of a Russian fighter slamming his superiors for a living larger than the enlisted men who are drinking water out of dirt puddles on the ground. And he complained that his request to come home was denied. Here it is.
There are these centaurs who live in 3-story cottages in the town, for f***'s sake. While you are here lying in a trench, you sleep in the dirt, eat in the dirt, you drink from puddles, while they walk around.
Are you going to try to get discharged?
Well, around New Year's, everyone lost their mind, because they had rejected all of our requests to go home.
Requested all our requests to go home. And there they are, stuck in trenches, drinking from filthy puddles. Some battalions, as we've been reporting, are losing about half their men. You don't have to guess at the morale because we can actually see what's happening, right? We've got some new video in to show you tonight into Out Front. Okay, what you're looking at here are Russian fighters essentially sitting ducks. They're taking cover in a trench and then taken out by a Ukrainian drone. Gone. Those are some of those lives extinguished. Those kinds of images are leading the chairman of the Joint Chiefs in the U.S., General Mark Milley, to say this.
Russia has lost. They've lost strategically, operationally, and tactically, and they are paying an enormous price on the battlefield.
Enormous price. There's another new video I want to share tonight. It's also new for us to Out Front. This is a Russian fighter jet, most likely hit by a Ukrainian Manpad, one of their portable air defense systems. Totally damaged beyond repair, and of course they want us to see this. But I can tell you, I've seen it, anyone there has seen it, the Ukrainian countryside is littered with burned out Russian tanks and missile systems. And yet Putin is now upping the ante. The Financial Times reporting that according to intelligence shared with NATO allies, Russia could be on the verge of launching a massive new air assault. And we can tell you that we're starting to see more and more Russian assets on at least 2 bases along the Ukrainian border on the Belarusian side. Belarus, of course, the same country Putin used as a launch pad for his assault on Kyiv. Tonight, Fred Pleitgen is there in Belarus, and David McKenzie is Out Front live in Kyiv. Let me begin with you, Fred, as we're talking about these assets, accumulating on the Belarusian side, this reporting about Putin wanting to launch an all-out military air assault. What are you seeing there?
Hi there, Aaron. Well, I think that's a really important point that you make, and certainly also a very important observation as well. One of the things that the Ukrainians have been saying for a very long time is that they fear, as the Russians might be preparing for that very large offensive, that Belarus could indeed play a large role there. And of course, as you also mentioned, that first thrust that the Russians had when the war began nearly a year ago, that also came from Belarus. There were a massive amount of Russian forces that went into Belarus, and the Russians still have thousands of soldiers on the ground here in Belarus. They train them here to then actually go into Ukraine to fight there through the Donbass. But, however, the Ukrainians believe that right now there's not enough Russian ground forces on the ground here in Belarus, but the air element, that really is the major important thing for them right now. There were just massive air exercises, Air Force exercises, with the Russian and the Belarusian militaries that just concluded a couple of days ago. Alexander Lukashenko, the Belarusian strongman, he said it was all defensive in nature. It really doesn't mean anything. But of course, we know that Lukashenko is very dependent on Vladimir Putin. And Lukashenko himself has said that Belarus's security would not be possible without Russia. Now, there's many believe that Vladimir Putin is trying to draw Belarus more into his orbit and possibly trying to draw it into this war as well. One of the things that we're looking at, Aaron, is that in a couple of days, Lukashenko and Putin are set to meet once again. We're going to wait and see what happens there, but certainly what the Ukrainians are saying is they've seen an uptick in Russian air movements on the Belarusian side, and also the Russians are using Belarus as well to hit Ukraine with some of those missiles that are obviously having devastating effects on Ukrainian cities. Aaron?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Fred Pleitgen, thank you very much. Live in Belarus tonight. And of course, on the front lines in Ukraine, the brutal fight continues. David McKenzie is out front with this report from Kyiv.
Thousands of miles from the front lines, a cemetery in Russia's Far East, for young men cut down in relentless waves of attack. Off camera, a woman sobs and says, "Our boys."
Наши мальчишки.
Soldiers of the 155th Marine Brigade, their unit has taken catastrophic losses in Vuhledar. For weeks, the coal mining town, the epicenter of Russia's efforts to break through Ukrainian lines. But the assault here has been a disaster. At least 30 Russian tanks destroyed by Ukrainian mines and artillery, a scrambled, chaotic retreat. Across this front, the Ukrainians are well dug in. Their lines aren't moving.
Ворога більш участилися артилерійські.
But this soldier says there are now 10 attacks a day. There used to be just a couple. To the north, the Russians are inching forward around Bakhmut, and every exit from the city is extremely dangerous. The battle's here at close quarters, unrelenting trench warfare on the edge of the city.
Місто Бахмут, місто під контролем ЗСУ.
It's so hard the enemy is pushing from different directions, says this Ukrainian soldier. All the efforts our men are making are priceless. Fighters of the Wagner mercenary group paraded their flag at a village on the outskirts of Bakhmut, but they are being forced to fight for every single house. And Wagner boss Yevgeny Prigozhin admits Bakhmut will not be taken tomorrow because there is heavy resistance and grinding. For the meat grinder to work properly, it is impossible to suddenly start festivities. This as Wagner units continue to endure heavy losses in its efforts on the hills around Bakhmut, where they are vulnerable to Ukrainian artillery and drones. Ukrainian officials now expect another Russian thrust further north in the forest near Kreminna. There's been fierce fighting here for weeks. A Russian advance here would allow the Kremlin to claim it's captured all of Luhansk region, a key objective of Vladimir Putin's war. But the Ukrainians are putting up stiff resistance, and their allies expect that in the spring they may be able to launch attacks of their own if they are supplied the weapons and ammunition they need.
We believe that there will be a window of opportunity for them to exercise initiative and then change or continue to create the right conditions on the battlefield there.
Before that, along this vast front, the Ukrainians must hold off what they expect to be an imminent Russian onslaught.
President Zelensky tonight, Aaron, saying that the situation on the Eastern Front is, quote, extremely difficult. He said their fighters are fighting over inches, over meters, as he put it. But this is an opportunity, he said, to destroy the Russian assets there. There has been a call for more ammunition, more weapons, the basic things soldiers need to push forward and to stave off a Russian assault. NATO is promising it, but Zelensky tonight said that speed saves lives.